Afternoon. So happy to see so many people here on this call. It makes me feel so wonderful. Just want to hear about all this advocacy that we're doing today. My name is David Allgood. I'm the Director of Advocacy at the Center for Accessible Living. And we're here today to talk about advocacy and other issues that are of importance to the disability community in Kentucky and around the country. So we're going to get started on some of our slides that we have to talk about effective advocacy and how we can communicate with our elected officials that make very important decisions about our lives. We need to be able to create some dialogue between those elected officials to make them know how we feel and how important it is to us as people with disabilities that our voices are heard and that we are listened to. So, advocating with elected officials. So you want to communicate directly with those elected officials, and we can, you can make a difference. And really advocacy is, and when I first tried advocacy, really when I first had my disability, I was a person who acquired my disability when I was 16. So I had been a person without a disability, and then I became someone with a disability, and for me, I felt kind of out of place or awkward, I guess. So I just wanted to blend into the background and not make any more any issues or raise any awareness because I didn't want to bring any more attention to myself. And so it wasn't really until I got to college that I really knew what was going on in advocacy and around other people with disabilities, because I was one of only two people with a visible disability in high school after my accident. But when I got up to the University of Kentucky and found out that there were federal laws that protected my issues as this person with a disability, and they built a brand new baseball stadium, and they had no wheelchair accessible seating, and that's where I kind of got into advocacy and learned about the issues. And we never could get a meeting with the athletic director, and then we went to the newspaper, the Kentucky Colonel, which is the university newspaper, and we were on the front cover, and the title was "Why Can't They Get In?" And all of a sudden, 2 days later, we got a meeting with the athletic director, and they had to go back and spend about $200,000 to make the baseball stadium accessible. So I kind of learned at that moment in my life that there are things that are important or should be important to those of us with disabilities, and that was one area, was access, because I have a physical disability and use a power wheelchair. And that's where I learned that we can make a difference, and that there are these federal laws, particularly the Americans with Disability Act. But back then when I did that, we didn't even have the ADA. It was Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. But I learned how to start communicating and effectively advocating for myself and others with disabilities. And basically advocacy is really sharing your concerns, your issues, and your story. Whether you are a person with a disability or you have a loved one or a friend with a disability, it's sharing your personal story of how something can either positively impact you or negatively impact you. And, I went up to Frankfurt when I first started at the Center for Accessible Living to talk about legislators about the personal care attendant program. And I was a little frightened, and I really didn't know what to think. And I was going to be before these important politicians. And it's really, I got up to the table and shared my experiences as a person with a disability, and how important PCAP, the personal care attendant program, was. And then it really wasn't that difficult. And believe me, politicians want your assistance and need your assistance. If you can become a trusted ally to them, then they're going to like talking to you and ask for your opinion. So communicating directly with them is important, and you can make a difference. Legislators who are elected, they represent you, and they want to know about the matters that are important, and they want to hear from you. So it's really important that we continue to do those efforts, and they need to learn about issues that are important in the community, and that they take part of that. And it's really easy once you create a dialogue and you start communicating and contacting them to get your voices heard in the political process. You don't always get what you want. It takes me sometimes several years to get pieces of legislation filed, but you keep on being persistent and keep on trying. Go to the next one.
It's not going. There we go.
So meeting personally with them is as we are in the coming out of the pandemic, but hopefully we don't go back into one. But it's really easy to meet with your legislators, get with them. A lot of times before the pandemic, they would have, once they weren't in the General Assembly, they would come home to their home districts and sometimes have a lot of, several of them around here would have Saturday morning coffee gatherings. You can call them at home. I mean, if you get information off of the internet, they have their home phone numbers listed. I mean, they are individuals that work for you. They're paid by the taxpayers. So get to know them, call them, write them emails. A lot of them do have the emails now. They want to know what's important to the constituents because, those of us with disabilities, we don't have a lot of money, but we do have one thing, the power to vote. And they have to get a certain amount of votes to in order to be able to keep their seat. So we do have that going for us. And if we're the largest minority in Kentucky and the largest minority in America, and if we can get together and let legislators know that these issues are important to us and we will vote and let them hold them responsible for that, then we can make some inroads into influencing and getting some impact for us. And again, I'm in Frankfurt quite a bit, so the legislators see me a lot, but also, try to be a reliable source to them. And a lot of them will call me on my cell phone, or I can call, they'll give me their cell phone numbers. And, they rely upon me and ask me about legislation. I've had legislators call me and ask me what I think about this bill or this other bill, and, I give my opinion. So you can become a trusted source, and, they like that because they see a lot of bills, sometimes thousands of bills during the General Assembly, and there's no way that they can know about all those bills. So you become a trusted source for them, and you can hopefully influence some things that will be good for people with disabilities and fight the bad laws that might hurt us. So make regular contact with them, keep that relationship going, and it can benefit both of you and them. And this is a quote from one of the legislators who has since retired. Legislators certainly want to hear from the citizens in their district. That's when it becomes very important to us, the legislators, and when it becomes important to the citizens. So it's easy to communicate with our office that no one can say they don't have enough time. So make the effort, get out there, and you can make a difference. Here's a website that's really easy to go to. If you don't know who your legislator is, you just go to this website, and you can click on the Kentucky House and the Kentucky Senate, and you find out their names. Just go to that website, and it's a real simple process. They need to learn about the needs of the disability community, and again, constituents who live in the districts, they represent you. Make sure that you vote. Can't stress that enough. You have to be registered to vote, and you have to vote because they look you up to see if if you're, especially if you're a consistent person who talks to them all the time. And perhaps some of the times you may not be happy with some of the things they're doing. If you haven't voted or even not even registered to vote, they can look that up very easily. And why do they need to listen to you if you're not registered to vote and you can't impact one way or negative way for them not be able to get their job back? So it's really important to be registered to vote and to vote, because if you haven't voted in the last 2 elections, they're most likely not going to listen to you. And we want to be prepared to learn about the legislators' interests and positions on the laws that are important to you. See how they voted in the past to let them kind of give you a guide as to what they might think they might do on bills that are important to us. So get to know how their positions are on certain legislations that is important to those of us with disabilities. The bill, it's just a written proposal that creates a change. Most bills can become a law if only 2/3 of the members are elected to each chamber to vote for it. Representative Jones files a bill, let's say it's House Bill 25, which will be known as House Bill 25 throughout the process when it's going through on its way to become a bill. And with the website, information from the WLRC.ky.gov, you get to know about the bill, where it's moving along in the process, and then you determine how the legislator voted on that. So it's a process just to get to know about the bills, but it's not that difficult to do. It's really quite simple, honestly, tracking the bill. And then before you want to contact your legislator, make sure you know what you want to say. Again, the more you can share personal information about, I was able to get out of a nursing home because of this program that enabled me to get some community-based services. Now I've been able to get employed part-time, and now I'm paying local, state, and federal taxes instead of, being reliant upon benefits. Something that's, important to you, your personal story, with a bill that you can vote, support, or oppose. Find out about as much as you possibly can about the bill and how it can impact you personally and people with disabilities overall. And, like say, if you were concerned about funding cuts to a program, learn about those program and the cuts before you make the contact, how it's going to, how much money are they going to cut out of that budget? How many people could be negatively or positively impacted? If they're going to cut it, they could be negatively impacted. If they're going to increase the funding, how positive, and how potentially we can serve more people in the community. If you want to talk about legislation, make sure you know the bill number, because again, they see so many items through the legislative, especially when they're in session, that they just can't keep track of it. If you say the bill about accessible parking, there might be 4 or 5 different bills about accessible parking. So you need to know that bill number and the sponsor so that they can really look it up quickly and that they know what they're talking about, so they don't have to try to guess which one you're talking about. And, again, make sure you know what that legislation, say the parking bill, accessible parking bill might do, and how it will affect negatively or positively yourself and the members of your community or the disability community statewide. Preparing your issues, it's really important to share your ideas and concerns and, back them up with the facts. Again, your personal stories are so impactful. I can't tell you how many times that I've been in Frankfurt and been, not just myself, but other individuals talk about personal experiences and how, if it's a good thing, how positively it helped their child maybe be able to get school-based services that help them graduate, or, if they had a brain injury and they weren't able to do a lot of things because of the severity of the disability, and basically their child was being stuck at home, not being able to do anything because of a lack of transportation. That really affects the overall view created by the legislators, and you really can be impactful if you share your personal stories. And when you want to make an appointment, you can phone or email the office, request the meeting. A lot of time you want to say what they'll ask you, what is this a matter about? And if you know the bill number, say, House Bill 25, it's about accessible parking. I'm a person who drives a van with a side entrance, and it's important to me because a lot of times I get trapped outside of my van, and it makes it difficult for me to do anything in the community. And always make sure you'd let them know how many people are going to be coming with you, so that they make sure that they have a room big enough, because their offices are pretty small up there. I mean, they could probably handle 4 or 5 people tops. Just let them know how many. And most effectively, meeting with them in their home districts when they can see you. It's a relaxed situation. It's not people coming in and out. It's not them having to rush to committee meetings during the General Assembly. So if you can meet them at home, it's really, really a better opportunity to create a good dialogue back and forth. Because once the legislature starts meeting, it really does get hectic, and their time is really consumed. So they need to hear from you before the session. But then again, you just call the Frankfurt office and ask for a request, and they can get back to you either via email or on your phone. But it's real quite simple just to call up to Frankfurt and ask for a meeting with your legislators. It's not that difficult to do. And there's a number there, the 564-8100, to let them call about the visit at home or in their office. When you're meeting with the legislators, there again, it's a little more probably relaxed. You might, if they're meeting in their district at home, but if it's at Frankfurt, again, they're part-time at this. So, be 15 to 20 minutes, usually the most you'll get. If you don't receive a call or email right away, don't get discouraged, wait a week and then try again. When you're meeting with them, you want to be polite, but you can be polite and persistent at the same time. Become an expert on the issue. Let them know. I'm kind of known about accessible parking up there. So the legislators will call me and ask about issues because I've gotten a couple bills passed in the last 10 to 15 years about that issue, but also other community-based services. So just be knowledgeable and really an expert on the issues that are important to you. And they will rely upon you a lot of times as a reliable, consistent source of information on these bills. And you're with a group that you want to get, and there are power in numbers. I agree. Encourage you if you can get more people, all who are their constituents, preferably, but this doesn't have to be. But get the group to no more than 5. Let one person do the introductions and the speaking, but other people will have pertinent information, particularly if it's personal stories. So when they let one person start that off, and be the contact for that person and probably their legislators or their staff. After doing the research on the issues, make sure that everything will be shared as courtesy of that legislator. Plan your presentation, make sure it's no more than 5 to 8 minutes if that's what you're going to talk about, because you want to have some time for some personal interaction. And again, relaying your personal stories, and rehearse before if y'all want to do that. A lot of times I think your personal stories are so effective that, but you want to make sure that it's in a concise and clear way that they understand. And sometimes you're not talking over each other and saying the same thing. So rehearsing sometimes can be beneficial for you all. Allow time for legislators and their staff members to respond or ask questions, because a lot of times they really don't have a lot of background, and there's so many issues that they're going to ask us sometimes a lot of questions about it. So just make sure you allow time for them to ask those questions. And if they ask you a question and you don't know, don't make anything up. Just say, you know what, I'm not sure right now, but I will get back with you with that, and make sure that you do that. But don't make something up, because particularly if they're in the session and you make something up and they go to the floor in 2 hours and say so-and-so said this and it's not truthful, you could have burned a very valuable bridge. So if you don't know it, just say, you know what, I'm really not sure about that, and I want to give you the right information. Let me get back with you, and make sure you get back with them as soon as you can, but have the right information. And be flexible when planning your time. Sometimes I've had legislators go on for 30 to 40 minutes and even longer, and then we've gone down to the cafeteria and spoke about issues. So, and then sometimes it'll be shorter because of the time constraints and other constituents who are coming in. So, and dress appropriately. Don't wear cut off shorts or a tank top when you're going there. Just make sure that I wear blue jeans a lot, but the dress shirt and casual dress shoes. And your issues are important and should be represented in a professional manner. One more slide there. There we go. Identify someone from your group to take notes during the meeting. So if you got any questions, that require a follow-up, you can make sure you get back with them. Be on time. I always get there a little early myself. If you're the person that's receiving the services, give examples. Again, I'm going to say this so many times, but your personal stories are so effective to making the point to the legislators. And you can bring materials that you can leave behind that they'll be able to look at and a lot of times give to their staff when they're trying to figure out some issues. That information can be very helpful for them to go back and look at, and make sure you bring enough to leave copies back behind them with them, and be professional, polite, and then thank them for the visit. And I really do encourage a thank you letter. I mean, they don't get a lot of them. Even if you can do that, sometimes you can't, but if you can do a handwritten thank you letter, that's really impactful because they get very few of those and they will remember those. Assign, your group members so that you have tasks. Somebody's going to call, somebody's going to do the letter, somebody's going to take the notes, who's going to do the research. I would suggest all of you do the research so that you all are knowledgeable and have the same basic information about the topic, professional and courteous, and provide information to show how you want to work together with this legislator. And we want to, Legislator Smith, I want to find solutions so that we can make it better for your constituents and myself, so we can all have a better quality of life back in our county. If you're a group, invite the legislator to a meeting. You might have a peer support group, or you might have some other meetings that you have in his district, but where a lot of you attend and have disabilities, invite them to that meeting. They like to go out and meet the legislators because they think that they can go and meet some potentially new voters. So a lot of times they like to come to those meetings that you might have, and leave copies of the materials and contact information for your group or yourself. And again, as I said, follow up on anything that you promised to get back with them. Make sure you do that. And keep track of how they voted. You talked about the issue and you explained to them and how it could vote, and how their vote can potentially affect your life. And if they voted the way that they didn't, you can always say, what, I thought we discussed this and I thought you were going to vote this way, but you didn't. That's really sad to hear. And I guess, we'll try it again. But if they continually to vote against the way that you didn't want them to vote, then get a lot of people, friends and families, to make phone calls that say, this is important to us and we didn't like the matter, the way that Legislator Jones voted on that, and we'll remember that on election day. And again, send a thank you note. And a phone call, it's really, I make them a lot of times, and we refer a lot of people to do that during the General Assembly. And it's a valuable way that you can communicate with the legislators, if there isn't time to make the letter, because sometimes a lot of bills are, going to the floor and some amendments will be made to a bill that you don't like. So you got to call them and let them know. So it can be really a time crunch that you need to contact them. And you can just call this 800 number. It doesn't cost a dime to call that. It's 800-372-7181. And you just leave them a message, and should have been updated on this one, but just go back into 2014. There were 1,400 bills introduced. So there's a lot of bills that they got to try to be able to keep track of. So we contact them and let them know what you're trying to get accomplished. And when you call, it's really easy to do. You'll call and they'll say, how can I help you? And you're going to leave a message for Representative John Doe on the House Bill 25, and they're going to get your name and address, because they want to make sure first and foremost that you are a constituent of that representative. And then again, that they'll be able to go back and see if you voted. Then you just leave your message and you try to make it pretty quick. Short and concise, and how you want them to vote. House Bill 25 is really important to me because it's going to create community-based services, and I might be able to stay in my home or move out of my parents' home because of this. And I want to be in the community and live like everyone else does in the community. So it's really a simple thing to be able to do. And again, importance of identifying the bill number, because I see so many. Keep it brief, be respectful. And when you call the legislative message line, they're going to write their information down, what they call a green slip. It's literally a little green piece of paper. And when a legislator comes in from their meeting or comes in from their district and comes in the office and they see 20, 30 green slips on their desk about one House Bill 25, they're going to say, oh, something's going on back in my district and I better pay attention to this. It doesn't mean they're going to always vote the way you want them to, but you've gotten their attention. So the more you can get people with disabilities and their families and their friends to call, the more effective you're going to have and more opportunity to maybe discuss these issues with the legislator, because again, it's all comes down to votes. Who's going to vote for me at the next election? So they want to stay in their job. So those green slips can make a very, very big impact. And letters and emails, mostly emails anymore. There are good ways to communicate with the legislators. You want to keep them brief. You don't want to go, because again, they're trying to look at so many things. Let them know what's important to you, what you're concerned about. You want to identify the bill and the sponsor. Again, be polite in the letter at the very beginning. You can become a little more forceful in the end if they don't vote the way you do, but you want to start the conversation in a polite manner. And don't do the form letters, because legislators know that if they get 5 letters with the exact same wording with just a different name at the end of it, that probably they're going to say some group or a lobby or lobbyist are getting this created, and it's really not that important to them sometimes. And when a legislator is hearing a vote, it's about to take place, an email may be the fastest way to contact them after the phone call. And just some basic information, on the letter, I want to share my support for this Bill 25, additional community-based services for me to live in the community. And please vote yes on this. Name, address, and your phone number. It's not that difficult. Rather simple, honestly. And, personal details, you may go in a little bit about it. I'm a person with a disability and I want to share my support for the bill that was sponsored by the different representative, and how it would pass, how it would really help me live independently and improve my quality of life, and not being in an institution separated from family and friends and people in the community. So sometimes you can expand a little bit more if you need to, but the shorter, concise, more personal you can make it, the better. And again, you just want them to vote on that yes on House Bill 25, and thank them there for the consideration. And please reach out to me if you have any questions. And again, persistence is a key thing. To be more effective, they need to hear from you on a regular basis. When the issues that are important to you that are coming up before the legislator, and don't be discouraged if they vote against it. Repeat that process. You can get everyone again to make calls, emails, and you never know what happens. We were very persistent years ago with the personal care attendant program. When the last time we got increased funding, we had people calling every single day. 2 different legislators who were their legislators having their constituents call, and literally one of them said, okay, we get it, enough. You can tell them to stop calling. We're going to vote for the bill. But of course we didn't tell them. We told everyone to keep on calling so that they would. But you got to be persistent. It took me 5 years to get the last accessible parking bill passed. I never thought they would. And there were some minor changes to the bill, but it took us 5 years. And that's about the average for a piece of legislation to get passed is 5 years. You got to keep on trying, because all different interests are sometimes in supporting you and sometimes voting against you. So it can be a challenging process, but do not give up, because in the end, it can pay off very well for you who are trying to fight for that bill. So be persistent. Remember that ongoing relationship can be so beneficial to you and people in the disability community. If you create that relationship with the legislator, then you become a trusted source of information. Send them letters and emails, get to know the interests of your legislators, and hopefully they'll get to know yours. If they vote in something in favor that you wanted them to do that, send them a thank you letter. It's really important. Most of the time legislators hear when things are going bad. A lot of times they don't hear when things are going well. So thank them for, if they devoted the way you wanted them to, and it created a good opportunity for people with disabilities, let them know that. And again, legislators in the General Assembly, each legislator represents different parts of Kentucky, called a district. Each district is numbered, and that goes, from far eastern to western to northern to southern. There's 38 members in the Senate and 100 House members. They're elected officials who they make the laws that are going to determine how the quality of life that we have, whether it's going to be beneficial to us or it can potentially be negative. So they make the issues that are important. They determine how things are going to go for us. So every Kentuckian, lives in a specific Senate or House district and is represented by one senator and one representative. And then a bill is basically a proposed law or change to an existing law. So again, with accessible parking, I wanted to create a bill that would make it more easy for people to have accessible parking issues, and kind of a little more challenging for some of the abuse that goes with the parking placard. So we got a bill passed that did some of those issues that we were trying to get. When we talk about constituents are just people like you and I who are represented by that legislator or that senator, representative or senator. So, you're the constituent. You're the one that can hire or fire them with the power of your vote. And the form letter or email is a created email that sometimes it can be some good if you just have some talking points and you tell people to add their personal experiences in there, then that can be good. But if you just have one form letter that looks like the same that everyone signs their name to, that's really not as effective as personalizing it. And that's the end of our, we have some other resources that I think we can share with you all at some point in time. If you ever had any, how to contact the legislators, the message line and some other things that we already talked about that. But if anyone ever wants to reach out to me or anyone at the Center for Accessible Living to talk about those issues or become more involved, we'll be happy to assist you and work with you in trying to create a better dialogue between yourself and your legislator on a statewide basis. Again, we're the largest minority in Kentucky. If we get together and make our issues and concerns known on certain bills that are important to us, then, and we generate calls from every end of Kentucky, north, south, east, and west, and legislators from all those different districts start hearing information about, again, let's just say House Bill 25, that's going to increase community-based services for people with disabilities. If everyone across the states generates calls, then we're going to have a much better chance. Again, could not pass, but we have a better chance there. Again, there is power in numbers. So the more effective we can become as a large group on a statewide basis, the more impact we're going to have and potential for change, positive change, hopefully, that will create for Kentuckians with disabilities. So it's all about getting involved in the process, contacting your legislators, letting them know who you are, being a person who votes, who's registered to vote and does vote, and being a part of the process and having your voices heard and becoming a reliable source for those legislators to look for a resource into issues that are important to the disability community.
David, we had a question in one of our previous sessions that I thought you might be better to answer. A lot of people wanted to know, I did self-advocacy, and a lot of people wanted to know what was going on in the legislature in the last year, and now what could they focus on? they wanted a good place to start.
Well, we got the waiver redesign that's going on right now. It's been going on for 2.5 years now. The Bevan administration was just going to make some pretty drastic changes, and then the Bashir administration came in and put some of those on hold, and was so some of the waiver redesigns for the supports for community living, the home and community-based services, the AB acquired brain injury, the Michelle P, trying to create some issues that'll make it more user-friendly and actually have more consumer input into those waivers. So it might be getting close to the end of the final comment. They've extended it twice, I think. So the state has to submit those proposed changes to the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services to see if they're approved. So maybe look into the waiver changes, and we're still trying to. I haven't got a bill created yet, but the sub-minimum wage in Kentucky, where you're allowed to pay people with disabilities literally 25 cents an hour for doing the same work as your non-disabled peer beside you might be doing, although your pace might be a little bit slower because of your disability. Still, the fact that just based solely on the fact that you have a disability, you can be paid 25 cents an hour versus the minimum wage at least is $7.50. It's pretty pathetic to say the least. So we're still fighting our battle about trying to get that done away with in Kentucky, where you have the ability to do that. And I think it's going to be eventually. I think the federal government is going to say that's going to have to be the law, but we need to fight for that in Kentucky. So those issues are important too. And we have formed a group called the CRPD, the Rights of Parents with Disability, Coalition for the Rights of Parents with Disabilities, I'm sorry. And we are trying to, again, in Kentucky right now, just because based solely on the fact that you have a disability, your parental rights can be terminated. You don't have to be shown to be abusive or neglectful. Just because you have a disability, you can be deemed a bad parent and have your parental rights done away with. So we created a coalition, are trying to work with that. We had a very productive first meeting, but after that, it's been kind of silent with the cabinet. And I know they've got a lot to do with the waiver redesign, but we need to, and I've been trying to contact them, and we're going to continue to do that, but we've got to get that changed too. Just the fact that you're solely based on the fact that you have a disability, that your parental rights can be terminated, is so discriminatory and outrageous that we need to get that changed, and hopefully that will take effect.
Yeah,
so those are some of the issues, I think.
We also had a comment that, we were talking about the ADA a little bit, and some of the disability history. We had a presentation on that, and some people, especially the younger folks, they're having a little bit of a disconnect between the fights that we did before to get where we are now, and that there's still fights to be fought. They just assume things are the way they are because they are. So what would you say to those folks?
Don't take things for granted. They can be easily taken away. You fought for decades to get the Americans with Disability Act, and I do literally mean decades, for advocates fighting for justice and equality and federal protection on discrimination, before 1990, and that's only 31 years ago, based solely on the fact that you have a disability. You could be discriminated against in employment, access, transportation, all types of things. Anybody could just say, no, sorry, I don't have to make my business accessible to you. No one's going to make me. And, so, it took literally decades for people to fight for that. And that passed in 1990, and probably about, 8 years later, Supreme Court cases started coming in against the ADA, particularly in employment. And then finally in 2010, the ADA Amendments Act was created to put back some of the protections that had been whittled down by the Supreme Court in a mere 15 years. So they took another congressional act to try to right the wrongs that we, like in the disability community, had been done, weakening the ADA, and that was only in 15 years. So a lot of newer and injured, disabled people, a lot of younger people with disabilities take for granted that's just the way it is, and it's going to stay that way. And Congress can change that in a heartbeat. You get some legislators that don't, and there are people that don't, they feel that that's been an infringement upon their rights. If they're a business owner and they don't want to make a ramp to their business, and they don't have to, then a lot of legislators in the past have felt that that's right and fought against the ADA. So just because you have them now doesn't mean that can change by a Supreme Court decision or congressional oversight. So you think that this is the way it's going to be and it'll be that way forever, and that's not the case.
History is definitely important because it can unfortunately repeat itself. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing this with us. We do have mental health in the middle of a pandemic tomorrow. And then we also have our ADA celebration on Friday. So thanks, David, for being a part of it.
Thank you all, and have a great day.